The real reason you're bloated, and it probably has nothing to do with what you ate. Here's something that's genuinely puzzling. You're sitting at the dinner table eating the exact same meal as the person next to you. And an hour later, you're unbuttoning your pants while they're perfectly fine. Or maybe you've noticed that when you switch to eating healthier, you actually feel worse, more gassy, more uncomfortable, more inflated than you ever did eating fast food. That doesn't make sense on the surface. But once you understand what's actually happening inside your body, it makes complete sense. Because here's the truth: bloating isn't really about the food, it's about the system that's supposed to handle the food. I'm talking about your entire digestive machinery: the acid in your stomach, the bile your liver produces and your gallbladder stores, the enzymes your pancreas pumps out, and the trillions of microorganisms living in your gut. When all of those pieces work together properly, digestion runs smoothly. When even one of them is off, everything downstream starts to struggle. So today, I want to walk you through where bloating actually originates, not just in one place, but at multiple stages of the digestive process. I'm also going to explain why certain types of discomfort show up in specific areas of your abdomen, and what each of those signals might actually mean. Because the worst thing you can do is chase a symptom without understanding its source. Treating the wrong problem doesn't fix anything, it just delays the real solution. Let's start at the very beginning. Your stomach was never supposed to be neutral. One of the most widespread misconceptions in the wellness world is the idea that your body should be alkaline. You've probably heard it. And while that idea has some merit in certain contexts, people take it way too far, all the way into the stomach, which is exactly where it doesn't belong. Your stomach is supposed to be intensely acidic. We're talking about a pH level somewhere between 1 and 3, a range so extreme that it's genuinely comparable to battery acid. That's not a design flaw, that's intentional. That acidity exists for several critical reasons. It begins the breakdown of proteins, it activates the enzymes that continue that process, it destroys harmful microbes that hitch a ride in the food you eat, and it enables the absorption of key minerals and vitamin B12. When your stomach acid is too low, a condition that's far more common than most people realize, digestion becomes incomplete. Partially broken down food moves further into the digestive tract, where it puts enormous pressure on systems that weren't designed to handle the heavy lifting. Those systems struggle. Things back up. Fermentation happens in the wrong places, and you end up bloated. Here's the counterintuitive twist: low stomach acid actually causes acid reflux. I know that sounds backwards, but there's a small valve at the top of the stomach that's designed to close once the acid reaches the right level. If the acid is too weak, that sensor never gets the signal, and the valve stays open, allowing what little acid there is to creep back up into the esophagus. So heartburn, indigestion, and GERD, in many cases, those aren't signs of too much acid. They're signs of not enough. As we age, stomach acid naturally declines. This is a huge reason why digestive problems become more common in middle age and beyond. And yet, the standard medical response is to prescribe antacids, which reduce acid even further, pushing the system in exactly the wrong direction. What many people actually need is more acid, not less. That's where something like apple cider vinegar, or more specifically, a supplement called betaine hydrochloride, can make a real difference. What your gallbladder is actually doing, and what happens when it's not. Just beneath your liver sits a small pear-shaped organ called the gallbladder. Its job is to store and concentrate bile, a fluid your liver produces continuously. Bile acts like a biological detergent. It emulsifies fats, breaking them into smaller particles so your body can actually absorb them and extract the fat-soluble nutrients they carry. Without adequate bile flow, fat digestion suffers, and when your gallbladder isn't releasing bile efficiently, the pressure shifts onto your pancreas, which has to compensate by producing extra digestive enzymes. That's a lot of additional strain on a system that was already spread thin. The pancreas, for its part, wears two hats. One hat controls blood sugar through insulin. The other hat churns out enzymes that break down proteins, fats, and carbohydrates. When the gallbladder isn't doing its job, the pancreas gets overloaded trying to fill the gap. And that's where a lot of digestive dysfunction quietly begins. The road through the small intestine. Once everything leaves the stomach and gallbladder, it enters the small intestine, a remarkably long tube, roughly 25 feet in total, where approximately 90% of all nutrient absorption takes place. The small intestine isn't just a passive pipe. Its lining produces its own enzymes and participates actively in breaking food down into smaller and smaller molecules. After that lengthy journey, whatever remains moves into the large intestine. This is home to the bulk of your gut microbiome, billions of bacteria and other microorganisms that specialize in fermenting fiber and other compounds your body can't digest on its own. Think of it like sourdough bread rising in a bowl, microbes producing gases as they feed and grow. In the right location, this is completely normal and even beneficial. But when that fermentation happens in the wrong place, everything changes. SIBO, when the wrong bacteria end up in the wrong place. One of the most significant and most underdiagnosed causes of chronic bloating is something called small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, or SIBO. The name says it all. Bacteria that are supposed to live in the large intestine have migrated upward and established themselves in the small intestine. And now, every time you eat, especially anything with fiber, those bacteria start fermenting immediately, right there in the small intestine, producing gas and causing bloating that can feel constant and overwhelming. What's particularly tricky is that SIBO makes healthy eating feel punishing. People who try to do the right thing by eating more vegetables or who start taking probiotic supplements often feel significantly worse because they're feeding the overgrowth. This can leave you feeling like your body is betraying you. I dealt with this personally for close to 15 years before I understood what was happening. It's genuinely life-disrupting. Normally, two things keep bacteria from colonizing the small intestine: adequate stomach acid, which kills off microbes before they can establish themselves, and bile, which has its own antimicrobial properties. When both of those are depleted, the small intestine becomes vulnerable. The microbes move in, and SIBO takes hold. Antibiotics also play a significant role here. They wipe out broad populations of gut bacteria, not just the harmful ones. And in the aftermath, other organisms that were previously held in check by those bacteria start to proliferate. Yeast, fungus, candida. The overgrowth of these organisms can show up in surprising ways. A distinct ammonia-like smell on someone's breath, skin fungus, recurring yeast infections, all signals that the internal microbiome has lost its balance. And when food isn't being properly digested, it doesn't just cause bloating. It stagnates. It stops moving. I've had patients in my practice who were having bowel movements only once every 2 or 3 weeks. That level of constipation is hard to imagine, but it's a real consequence of a digestive system that's fundamentally broken at the top. The fish tank problem.
Here's a way to think about all of this that I find really clarifying. Imagine a fish tank. If the water becomes contaminated, the fish gets sick, no matter how premium the food you're feeding them is. You can treat each individual symptom, but if the water itself stays toxic, nothing will actually recover.
Your digestive system works the same way. The environment has to be right before anything else can function. Ultra-processed food tends to sidestep this issue because it's already pre-broken down. There's very little demand placed on the digestive system. That's why so many people can eat junk without any bloating, but then suffer terribly when they try to eat whole foods or raw vegetables. It's not that the healthy food is the problem, it's that the digestive system doesn't have the tools it needs to handle real food. Reading the map. What pain in different areas might mean. Now let's get specific about location, because where your discomfort shows up can tell you a lot about its origin. Under the right rib cage. This is where the gallbladder lives. Pain or pressure here often points to bile sludge, bile that has become too thick to flow properly, rather than a full gallstone. Older medical literature frequently recommended bile salts as a treatment for exactly this kind of congestion. Taking purified ox bile or bile salts after a meal can restore proper bile flow and significantly reduce that pressure. A specific bile salt called TUDCA is particularly useful taken on an empty stomach. It tends to lubricate the biliary system quickly and effectively. Right shoulder or upper right back. This is what's called referred pain, and it often traces back to the bile duct, the tube that connects the gallbladder to the liver. When that tube becomes congested, the pressure can back up into the liver and radiate up through the shoulder and back. Many people with this pattern don't connect it to digestion at all. Center to upper left. This region encompasses the stomach itself. A full, heavy feeling here could indicate low stomach acid, a hiatal hernia, or general gastric congestion. Just below the stomach sits the pancreas, so pancreatic involvement is possible, though less common. Center or spreading across the abdomen, especially after eating. This is the classic SIBO pattern. The bloating can be diffuse and unpredictable, often worse with fiber-rich foods or probiotics. Lower right. This is where the small intestine meets the large intestine at the ileocecal valve. Congestion here often responds well to gentle manual massage of the area, something I taught many patients to do on themselves. It can relieve pressure and help move things along. That said, pain in the lower right can occasionally signal appendicitis, which absolutely requires medical evaluation. Don't skip the doctor. Side or radiating into the groin. This pattern might suggest a kidney stone, particularly if it's shifting through the ureter. An ultrasound is usually the least invasive way to confirm. If kidney stones are a recurring issue, magnesium glycinate, around 1,200 milligrams daily, can help prevent the calcium oxalate crystals that form most commonly. Magnesium binds to oxalate and keeps it from pairing with calcium. What you can actually do about it. Let me get practical. For low stomach acid, betaine hydrochloride is the most direct solution. Taking 3 to 5 tablets before a meal can make a noticeable difference within just a few days if that's the underlying issue. You continue it over several weeks, then gradually taper off to see whether the symptoms stay resolved. Apple cider vinegar can offer some relief in the short term, but it doesn't actually rebuild your stomach's acid-producing capacity. If you're deficient in potassium, sodium, or chloride, those gaps may be limiting your body's ability to produce hydrochloric acid in the first place. So addressing nutritional deficiencies is part of the longer-term fix. For bile insufficiency, TUDKA, taken on an empty stomach twice daily, can produce significant relief fairly quickly. Bitter foods and herbs, dandelion greens, arugula, and similar plants stimulate bile production naturally and are worth incorporating into your diet. For SIBO, the approach is layered. Getting stomach acid back up is step 1, since that's the main defense against bacterial overgrowth. Intermittent fasting helps by giving the small intestine a genuine rest and allowing its natural cleaning mechanism, called the migrating motor complex, to sweep the intestine between meals. For more persistent cases, a carnivore-style diet temporarily removes all fiber, essentially starving the bacteria of their fuel source. There's also a specific probiotic strain called Lactobacillus reuteri that's proven remarkably effective at regulating the small intestinal microbiome. Most people with SIBO are deficient in it. It can be cultured at home into a yogurt-like preparation that contains hundreds of billions of organisms per serving, far more than any standard probiotic supplement. Done properly, it's one of the most powerful tools available for resetting the small intestine. One final note on dietary strategy while your system is recovering. Nuts, seeds, grains, and legumes are among the hardest foods for a compromised digestive system to handle. Removing them temporarily, while you rebuild stomach acid, restore bile flow, and correct any microbial imbalance, can make the healing process significantly smoother. Lightly cooked or fermented vegetables like sauerkraut and kimchi are usually well tolerated, even when raw vegetables aren't. But every person is different, and the worse the system is, the more you may need to simplify. The key insight to hold on to through all of this is that bloating is almost never just about the food. It's about the condition of the machinery doing the work. Fix the machinery, and the food takes care of itself.